Shocking truth, cops torched woman's passport at 3 a.m. then realized she's the AG's wife. The scene unfolded in the dead of night, when darkness blanketed the small town of Mill Creek. It was a chilling hour, the kind where secrets linger in the shadows and anything could happen. A car screeched to a halt outside a quiet apartment. Heartbeats thundered, and onlookers crouched behind curtains, wide-eyed. Officers in crisp blue uniforms stormed the building, their flashlights piercing the stillness. They didn't know the unease that would ripple through the community once the night's events unraveled. A woman's life was about to be turned upside down. Inside that apartment, Sandra Collins, the gentle wife of the town's assistant general, lay asleep, unaware of her impending doom. Suddenly, fists pounded on her door, pulling her from dreams into a nightmare. Groggy and scared, she stumbled to the door, her heart racing, a tightness in her chest. The officers barked orders, thrusting their way in and grabbing her passport like it was contraband. Little did they realize, this was no ordinary woman. Sandra held power in the form of a name that could very well shake their world. In a whirlwind, the officers gathered around a table. What happened next sent shockwaves through the air. Without hesitation, frantic commands rang out as they whipped out matches and set the passport ablaze. Flames danced, licking the air as her identity turned to ash. It was a grotesque scene, her written past disappearing in an instant, turning her future into a jumble of questions and confusion. Murmurs of disbelief erupted among the bystanders. What the hell are they doing? Someone gasped, shaking their head in shock. Was this a random act of cruelty, or was there something darker brewing beneath the surface? Things escalated quickly when a higher-ranking officer entered the room, eyes widening as he glanced at the smoke curling into the ceiling. His gaze fell on the burning fragments and he gasped, "Wait, that's Sandra. The AG's wife." The horror set in. Their egos had blindsided them, hot tempers fueled by reckless assumptions. People in the crowd held their breath, pinches of dread climbing their spines. What was going to happen next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Back in the apartment, the chaos intensified. Calls were made, rushing to cover up the massive blunder. The tension was unbearable, thick as the smoke still lingering in the air. Sandra's heart raced with a mix of confusion and fury. What was happening? As panic set in, tiny threads of fear woven through her mind, her thoughts spiraled. Did they know who she was? Did they care? Would this be the end of everything she built? As the sun began to rise, casting a pale light over the embarrassed faces of the officers, one thing became clear: this was just the beginning. The stubborn embers of destruction still simmered in the aftermath of their reckless actions. What would Sandra do next? Would she fight back or hide in the shadows, forever marked by the night her life spiraled out of control? The quiet town of Mill Creek braced itself. Secrets were about to unfurl, and no one was safe anymore. The morning light was just a feeble glow, struggling to penetrate the fog of confusion enveloping the apartment. Outside, whispers rippled through Mill Creek, a quiet storm brewing with wild speculation. As officers scurried to cover their tracks, concern etched deep lines on their faces. They were now soldiers in a battlefield forged from their own reckless error. Sandra stood frozen amidst the chaos, her hands trembling as she glared at the flickering remnants of her passport. Each burning fragment represented more than just an official document, it was a symbol of her identity, her life. Desperation clawed at her throat. I have to get out of here, she thought, but the weight of the situation kept her rooted to the spot. What if they came after her next? Grabbing her phone from the kitchen counter, she dialed her husband, David. No response. The idea of him being unreachable made her skin crawl. He was the town's assistant general, a pillar of strength, but what good was power if it couldn't protect her? Abruptly, the reality slammed into her. His status wouldn't shield them from this scandal. It would only heighten the stakes. As she managed to step outside, the chill of the morning air hit her like ice water. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, peeked through her curtains, eyes wide and alert. The whispers rose, floating through the town like a ripple in a pond. Sandra's heart pounded. What would people think? Would they blame her for the debacle? Loud sirens cut through the stillness, and a squad car pulled up. The officer emerged, face stern, and headed straight for her. Panic surged. They'd come for her. Did they know what she had seen? Mrs. Collins. He barked, and she felt all eyes on her, some full of sympathy, others of accusation. But she stood her ground. You can't do this. You can't just burn someone's identity. We were misinformed, he spluttered, but Sandra cut him off. Misguided? You torched my whole life. How could you do this? Sordid regrets hung in the air, heavy with a mix of guilt and anger. Calm down, please. We need to explain. His attempt at reason fell flat as emotions boiled over. But she wasn't ready to back down. Fueled by adrenaline, she stepped forward, her voice rising. What are you hiding? This wasn't just a mistake. I want answers, and I want them now. Her outburst caught the attention of the higher-ranking officer from earlier. He appeared more composed, yet puzzled. Sandra, we can talk in private away from prying eyes. For the first time, she noticed a flicker of genuine concern in his eyes. Could he be different from the others? Was he part of a bigger cover-up? Part of her wanted to take the chance, but another part screamed that stepping into darkness could be dangerous. As she hesitated, the street felt electric with tension. Bystanders held their breath, not sure what drama would unfold next. What kind of man was this officer? Should she trust him? Meanwhile, a distant voice screamed through the crowd, and her heart skipped. Did you hear? They're saying it could be Elizabeth's missing files. And the AG's involved. Her thoughts raced. Elizabeth? What files? The implications sent chills down her spine. Secrets were starting to reveal themselves, and suddenly everything felt intertwined and far more sinister. What had she walked into? As the chilling wind picked up, she could feel the dread clasping her heart. The stakes had risen and each moment felt like a countdown. Would she dive deeper into this rabbit hole or retreat into the safety of ignorance? Her decision loomed overhead like a heavy cloud, begging to burst. But there was no turning back now. What horrific truth lay ahead? Would Sandra uncover a terrifying conspiracy, or would it swallow her whole? The thought sent shivers down her spine, as she prepared to face the storm. The officer stood there, an imposing figure against the gathering tension. Sandra's heart raced as she assessed him, searching for signs of menace or sincerity. He glanced over his shoulder at the crowd, then leaned in slightly. I don't know if it's safe to talk here, he said, his voice low but urgent. With a flick of his gaze, he gestured toward a nearby alley. The shadows were deep, promising concealment but also danger. She hesitated, every instinct screaming for her to run. But curiosity whispered a different narrative, a chance at answers. Let us go, Sandra finally said, forcing her legs to move. The moment they stepped into the alley, the world outside faded into muffled sounds. She turned to face him, desperate for clarity. Tell me what's happening, she demanded, her voice trembling but firm. The officer ran a hand through his hair, glancing again at the mouth of the alley. You need to understand, it's complicated. We were after something that ties to your husband's office. That's why. He took a breath, clearly weighing his words carefully. Your passport and the identity we destroyed was collateral damage in something much larger. Someone is manipulating events from behind the scenes. His words hung in the air, a heavy weight. What do you mean collateral damage? What has my husband got to do with this? I wish I could tell you everything, but I can't. Not yet. Just know, it's powerful people who don't care who gets hurt. I'm pulling threads from within the department, trying to expose the truth, he confessed, his eyes pleading. Why should I trust you? Sandra snapped, the fear coursing through her veins now mingling with anger. I understand your distrust, but I wasn't in on this. I'm trying to stop it, he insisted. The AG's office is at the center of something that could shatter this whole town. The missing files, those are connected to a fraud scheme that runs deep. Her stomach churned. Fraud scheme? What are you talking about? Elizabeth was investigating it before she vanished, he blurted, watching her reaction closely. She dug too deep. The AG had to cover it up, and your husband, he may not even know the full scope. But if they see you, if they think you know suddenly, a noise echoed from the alley entrance. A figure emerged, backlit by the morning light. Her heart stopped as she recognized him. It was David, his brow furrowed, eyes brimming with concern. Sandra! He shouted, rushing toward her. Stay back! She called, panic slicing through her words, but it was too late. The officer's demeanor shifted, his eyes widening with sudden fear. We need to go, now. He ordered, grabbing Sandra's arm. Who is this? David shouted, confusion twisting his features. Before Sandra could respond, she caught movement from the corner of her eye. Other officers were closing in, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses and stern expressions. Run! The officer yelled, pulling her toward the other end of the alley as David's bewildered shout echoed behind them. I'm not leaving you, Sandra! He yelled, desperate. As they burst into the open street, the chaos bloomed anew. The crowd was now a bubbling cauldron of suspicion and confusion. Heart pounding, she shot a glance back at David, his face muddled with panic. Follow me. The officer barked, leading them both down a side street. They slipped into the underbelly of Mill Creek, darkened alleys, unkempt sidewalks, everything twisting and turning as the urgency swelled. Suspicion haunted her, hot and heavy. Could David truly be innocent? Why did they target you? She breathed, trying to keep up with the officer's relentless pace, her mind racing. It clearly means they're watching, he replied tersely, looking back once. That means we're running out of time. But if we're going to expose this, we need to find the truth, and it's not safe for you here anymore. Wait. Sandra stopped, the reality crashing in like a harsh wave. What truth are we talking about? The truth about Elizabeth? What happened to her? Yes, he said, eyes fierce and determined. And why you're at the center of it. We need to dig deeper before it all fades away. As adrenaline surged through her body, a terrifying thought blazed in her mind. What if she was already too late? And then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of sirens building up again behind them. The hunt was on, and with each passing second, the stakes reached new heights. Could she trust this officer, or was he leading her into a trap? As the distance between freedom and capture shrank, she felt a familiar sense of dread tighten around her heart. Could she really uncover the truth before it consumed her entirely? The only way out was through into the abyss ahead. What horrifying secrets lurked just beyond the shadows? Would she uncover the answers before the walls closed in, or had she already ventured too far into perilous waters? As they dashed further into the labyrinth of Mill Creek's back alleys, the world behind them melted into chaos. Sirens screamed, drowning out the frantic pulsing of her heart. Sandra's mind raced. Who was this officer? Could he truly be trusted? Where are we going? She gasped, desperately trying to match his frantic pace. Her breath came in shallow bursts, the weight of the moment pushing down on her. Just keep moving. He snapped, briefly glancing over his shoulder. His expression was grim, but determination flickered in his eyes. We can't stop. Not yet. They turned a sharp corner, and the alley opened into a small, dimly lit courtyard. Graffiti adorned the walls, a mockery of the chaos surrounding her. As they slowed to catch their breath, the officer pressed his back against the wall. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We need to get you to safety first. They are watching every move." "Who is they?" Sandra demanded, her voice trembling with equal parts fear and indignation. "What do you mean they're watching? What more could this have to do with me and my husband?" The officer's forehead creased with concern. "Those who covertly control things behind the scenes. Powerful people who will do anything to keep their secrets hidden." He paused, grabbing her shoulders. "If they think you know about Elizabeth's investigation, they won't hesitate to eliminate you." Eliminate her. The words lingered dangerously in her mind. The horrifying implications swirled around like smoke, suffocating her thoughts. Elizabeth? Her husband's colleague who had vanished. Sandra pulled away, a storm of panic and anger brewing within her. "I came here looking for answers, not to become a pawn in some dark game." He stood taller, trying to hold her gaze. "You're not a pawn. You're the key to exposing this. We have to act fast. If your husband is involved, we might be running out of time." The urgency in his voice made her pulse quicken. "David can help. I can convince him," she began, but the officer interrupted sharply. "No. Are you mad? If he is part of this, he could endanger you further." A tear pricked her eye, but she would not yield to despair. David was her husband, she couldn't accept that he might be entangled in something sinister. Before she could voice those thoughts, a distant shout echoed from the street, heavy footsteps pounding against the pavement. Sandra felt her stomach twist with anxiety. "Hide!" the officer commanded, yanking her toward a darkened nook just off the courtyard. She squeezed in beside him, heart racing as she peered out. A group of officers stormed into the courtyard, scanning the area with predatory precision. Her breath hitched as their eyes swept over the shadows, but thankfully, they seemed unaware of the danger lurking just within reach. "Do you have a plan?" Sandra whispered, her voice trembling. "Shoo!" he snapped, pressing a finger to his lips, his eyes locked on the intruders. "They'll figure it out soon enough. We have to find a way to get to the others before they do." The tension coiled around them like a suffocating blanket. Sandra could feel her heartbeat in her ears, matching the urgency of their situation. "Others? People who can expose the operation and clear your name. But first, we need to regroup," he said, still focusing on the officers. "Stay close." Just as Sandra was about to respond, she noticed David peering into the courtyard from the street. His expression mirrored her own wariness. He seemed torn, unsure whether to approach or retreat. "David!" she whispered urgently, but the officer's hand clamped over her mouth. "Don't expose yourself." Still, her heart screamed for him. Desperation settled in, twisting deeper. Then, without warning, David called her name, stepping closer, determination etched across his face. "Sandra! Where are you?" A split-second decision. The officer moved to pull her back further into hiding, but Sandra shook him off. "I can't leave him." Just then, the sirens grew louder, their ominous wail filling the space. Her body froze. The moment was slipping away, tension coiling tighter. "Follow my lead," the officer hissed, and she nodded, bracing herself for whatever came next. But could she really trust him? Could she risk everything for answers? As David's eyes met hers, a mixture of confusion and fear, Sandra knew she had to make a choice. Would she expose whatever darkness loomed ahead, or would remaining hidden save her family from an unknown threat? What secrets lingered just beyond her reach, ready to unravel everything? Only time would tell, but every tick of her heart echoed with the knowledge, her journey was just beginning. The tension in the air felt electric, thick enough to suffocate. Sandra stared at David, panic etching deeper lines across her features. She needed him to understand that danger lurked behind every corner, but she couldn't risk exposing their fragile position. "Don't!" The officer hissed again, his expression a mix of frustration and urgency, but she was already stepping out of their darkened nook, her instincts tangled with desperation. "David!" she called, voice trembling but louder now, fear breaking the surface of her resolve. He took a tentative step forward, uncertain. "Sandra, what is happening? Where are you?" The way he scanned the courtyard ignited something deep within her, hope. But with every second that passed, the weight of dread coiled tighter around her chest. The officer grabbed her arm, grounding her. "You can't. If they see you I have to," she insisted, pulling away. "He deserves to know." David paused again, his eyes darting to the officers in the courtyard. Their movements were focused, relentless. She could see the realization wash over him like a wave, this was bigger than either of them. "Get back!" the officer commanded, pulling her back into darkness. But she shook him off again. "Please, just trust me, David," she yelled, desperate to make him understand. His face hardened. "What do you mean trust you? I don't even know what is going on." The officer shoved a hand on her shoulder, firm but urgent. "They'll hear you. We have to be quiet." And then, like the air cracked with anticipation, David's eyes fell on the officer. "Who is he?" David spat, suspicion boiling over. "Why should I trust him?" Before she could say a word, two of the officers turned sharply, weapons drawn, eyes narrowing as they scanned the area. Sandra's heart plummeted. The moment of confrontation had arrived, her world hanging in the balance. "Run!" the officer bellowed, and without thinking, Sandra grabbed David's hand. They bolted toward the far end of the courtyard, adrenaline surging through her veins like fire. Behind them, shouts erupted, chaos spilling into the night. "Stop!" one of the officers yelled, voice echoing through the alley, but they kept pushing forward, weaving between the crumbling walls and fragmented graffiti. Her lungs burned as they fled, but she couldn't afford to look back. The pounding of their footsteps echoed her frantic heartbeat. David squeezed her hand tighter, and she could feel his fear match her own. "What is happening, Sandra?" he shouted over the cacophony, desperation rising. "Why are we running?" "I don't know," she cried, praying the truth wouldn't crush them. "But we have to trust him." Then the alley opened up into a wider street. All around, shadows danced in the dim light. They veered left into an even tighter alleyway, trying to stay out of sight. Just as they ducked aside, another group of officers appeared further down the street. They were everywhere, like wolves hunting prey. "Where do we go?" David asked, breathing heavily, panic rising as each second ticked away. "We have to find a place to hide, somewhere they won't think to look," the officer urged, his voice urgent yet calm, as if he had a plan. A heavy silence fell for just a moment as they huddled, listening to the distant sirens and shouting. Sandra could almost feel the eyes on them, invading, threatening. "Wait here," the officer pressed against a door marked with peeling paint. "In here." They slipped through the doorway, Sandra feeling the rough edges of the door frame against her back. Darkness enveloped them, heavy and thick. "What is this place?" David snapped, trying to adjust his eyes. "An old warehouse," the officer replied, scanning the shadows, his silhouette a mere shadow in the gloom. "It's temporary but safe. For now." But could they stay safe? Were they really hiding from threats, or walking deeper into a trap? An eerie chill coursed through her, tightening her throat. This was not just about survival anymore. Before she could voice the fear churning inside her, the door rattled behind them. They turned as gasping breaths broke the stillness. "Keep quiet," the officer warned, sensing their dread. But the uncertainty clawed at Sandra. What if they were about to be found? Could she protect David if danger loomed so close? And what lay in wait just beyond this darkness? Unknown dangers lurked in every corner, every breath, and something told her that this was not the end of the chase, but merely the calm before the storm. A low hum of noise ricocheted off the cold, metal walls of the warehouse, creating a rhythm as erratic as Sandra's heartbeat. Together, she and David stood frozen, eyes wide, breaths shallow. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on them, bringing with it whispers of doubt. Who are they? David's voice cracked through the silence, each word tinged with an anxiety that wrapped around her like a vice. Just stay quiet, the officer whispered, his voice low and steady. He stepped away from the door, scanning their surroundings with an intensity that made Sandra's heart race faster. They wouldn't just be looking for us, would they? David shot a glance at Sandra, pleading for reassurance. They might be, she replied, feeling her stomach twist. But we need to focus on finding a way out, a way to understand what's happening. Time ticked sluggishly as they huddled behind rusting crates, minds racing. Every rattle of metal, every distant echo felt like the tightening of a noose around their throats. The officer crouched low, his silhouette blending with the shadows, but Sandra could see the tension written in every line of his face. We can't stay here for long, he said sharply, cutting through her spiraling thoughts. If they're out there, they'll eventually find this place. It was a reminder that their hiding spot was merely a temporary refuge, a heartbeat away from discovery. What do you know, officer? Sandra demanded, her voice barely a whisper but simmering with frustration. Why did we run? Why do they want us? His gaze pierced through her, assessing her determination. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, he confessed. But right now, you need to trust me more than ever. Before either of them could respond, the rattling door gave way to a heavy thud, sending a jolt through Sandra's body. They turned as the metal creaked open, and two armed figures entered, illuminated momentarily by a shaft of light spilling into the darkness. Search every corner. One of the figures barked, the authority in his voice unwavering. They can't have gone far. The officer instinctively moved toward Sandra and David, shooting them a look that burned with urgency. We need to split up, he instructed, but the word sounded like an omen rather than a plan. I'll distract them. You two head to the back. There's a window that leads outside. Are you insane? David hissed, eyes wide. They'll shoot you. I won't let them catch you, the officer said firmly, voice steady despite the chaos. Now go. With the cold grip of dread tightening around her heart, Sandra nodded. It was the only option, the only way to keep David safe. They took off down the narrow aisle created by towering crates, her breath coming in quick, desperate gasps. Each step felt like a betrayal of the officer's sacrifice, but she forced herself to concentrate. Where's this window? David whispered urgently, pulse racing in rhythm with her own. Further back past the storage area, she replied, glancing back and feeling the tension choking her throat. They needed to move faster. With every step, the sounds of chaos echoed ever closer. Shouts intermingled with the sound of boots slamming against concrete, frantic but purposeful. Sandra could feel her heart thud in sync with the approaching danger, each thump urging them onward. When they rounded a corner, their destination came into view, a small, cracked window, barely big enough for one of them to fit through. Here, this is it. She whispered, urgency pushing her closer. But just as they crouched beneath the window, an alarm blared from somewhere deep within the warehouse, a piercing wail that shattered the air. The lights flickered on, flooding the space with blinding brightness. They know we're here. David shouted, panic igniting in his eyes. A sudden crash echoed behind them. Sandra's feet felt rooted to the ground, an overwhelming sense of hopelessness threatening to swallow her whole. Go. She urged David. Now. Just as David was about to rise, they were confronted with a terrifying sight. One of the officers, gun drawn, blocking their only escape route. Freeze! The officer yelled, Sandra's breath hitched painfully in her throat. What now? They were trapped, with nowhere left to run. And then, a familiar face broke through the chaos. "Stop. Don't shoot." A voice rang out, sharp and desperate. Sandra's heart skipped as she recognized the figure stepping forward, the officer who had helped them escape. "Look," he said, raising his hands, "they're not your enemy. They're in danger." But danger loomed larger, and just as the situation teetered on a knife's edge, the true depth of the conspiracy began to unravel. What if everything they thought they knew was a lie? Did they really have the strength to survive what was coming next? The warehouse buzzed with an electric tension, the air thick enough to cut with a knife. The officer who had stepped forward, his hands trembling but raised, was instantly recognized as someone from Sandra's past. She recalled his stony demeanor during the last precinct briefing, his dark eyes surveying the room like a hawk. Now, there was a desperate urgency etched across his face. "Get them out," he barked, directing his command at the armed officer blocking their escape. The crack of a gunshot echoed in the space, ricocheting off the steel walls, but the officer didn't flinch. "You don't understand what's really going on." "Shut up," came the growl from the armed man. "Put your hands up or I'll shoot." Sandra's heart hammered wildly in her chest, the world blurring at the edges as fear kicked in. "What is happening?" she gasped, looking between the two men, searching for clarity amidst the chaos. "Just trust me," the first officer urged, his voice tinged with a desperation that set her nerves on fire. Before she could process his words, another crash reverberated through the warehouse. The armed officer's eyes flickered, leaving an opening, and in that instant, her instincts kicked in. "Run!" she shouted to David, shoving him toward the window. David needed no second invitation. They darted for the fractured opening, scrambling up the wall of crates that provided a precarious boost. With each heartbeat, she could sense the shouts behind them growing louder, urgency mingling with the adrenaline flooding her veins. "Go first. I'll follow," David urged, his voice straining as he glanced over his shoulder. "No time," she pleaded, rising on her tiptoes, trying to muster enough strength to hoist herself through, panic clawing at her throat. Her heart plummeted when she heard footsteps pounding closer, the shouts merging into a frantic roar. "Stop!" The armed officer's voice cut through the noise as she managed to fit halfway through the window. A sharp pain shot through her arm, and she winced. "Get back here or I'll..." A loud explosion of sound, a shotgun blast, deafened her momentarily, followed by shrieks. Sandra squeezed the rest of the way through, breathless, landing hard on the ground outside. Bright moonlight struck her like a spotlight, illuminating a stark reality she longed to escape: uncertainty and danger. "David!" she screamed, terror curling in her stomach when she realized he wasn't behind her. She jerked her head back through the window. The officer who had stepped forward was grappling with the armed man, both men fighting against the chaos now spilling outside. David was nowhere in sight, and as she stood up, horror filled her. "David!" she called again, straining to hear over the rattling din. "Stay low. Find cover." The first officer's commanding voice rang outside the window, a hint of desperation in it, shedding light on a stalemate that was spiraling out of control. Suddenly, the warehouse door slammed open, sending a wash of light cascading across the scene. Sandra turned to see a shadowy figure emerge, silhouetted against the bright backdrop, a gun drawn with intent that sent shivers down her spine. "Leave them. We need to move now," the newcomer shouted, frustration lacing his tone. "Who are you?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling. "Not the time," he snapped, sweeping his arm for her to follow. "Come on. You have to trust me." But how could she trust another stranger when the stakes felt so impossibly high? What did they want from her? From David? The noise intensified: shouts, shots, a cacophony of chaos, and every instinct within her screamed to stay where she was. Yet, deep down, she understood they were in the eye of a storm. She could either run or remain anchored in a disaster waiting to unfold. Before she could weigh her options, the shadows deepened and the armed men turned their weapons, eyes trained on the door. "Get in!" Now. The familiar voice of the officer pierced through once more. Just as she was about to dart in that direction, a chilling realization pierced through her thoughts. What if they weren't just trying to save her? What if they wanted to use her? In the midst of the gunfire and confusion, she faced a chilling truth: her life as she knew it had shattered. And what was left was still clinging to the edge of darkness, teetering dangerously. They had to escape, and fast, but at what cost? As she bolted toward the saving grace of uncertainty, a horrifying realization opened up before her like a chasm. Could this be the end, or merely the beginning of a far worse nightmare? The adrenaline surged in Sandra's veins as she dashed for the shadowy figure, heart racing. Every sense screamed at her to run, but doubts gnawed at her mind. Who was he? Was he friend or foe? She could hardly afford to stand still, not with gunshots ringing out behind her. Go! Get moving! He yelled again, urgency slicing through his voice. He took a step forward, extending a hand toward her. With no other option, she grabbed on tight, her fingers trembling around his wrist. "Where's David?" she shouted, panic rising again. "He's fine. But we need to get out of here." His dark eyes shimmered with the weight of conviction, but unease settled in her gut. The chaos erupted anew, and the arsenal of violence around them swelled. The last thing she wanted was to leave David behind, but she couldn't dwell on what she didn't know. They sprinted away from the warehouse's suffocating darkness, her feet pounding against the concrete, her mind racing. The moonlight illuminated a cracked pavement leading into an alleyway, promising a brief refuge. As they ducked into the shadows, a searing pain shot through her side. She stumbled briefly but caught herself. The stranger turned, concern flickering over his face. "Are you okay?" "I'll be fine." She clenched her teeth, forcing the pain to the back of her mind. Every heartbeat reminded her that danger lurked just behind them, and there was no room for weakness. "Listen," he urged, his voice low. "We can't stay here. They're hunting for you. We need to keep moving." "Who? Why? What is going on?" Her voice cracked, frustration mingling with fear. The stranger paused, glancing back the way they had come. "There's no time. Let me explain later. Right now, we need to go." She sensed determination in him, but questions churned relentlessly. Were they targets now? Why had their lives flipped so drastically? Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed through the alley, chilling her to the bone. "We have to split up," the man hissed urgently. "You head towards the street, I'll create a diversion." "Are you crazy?" she snapped, grasping his arm. "I can't let you do that. You don't have a choice." He yanked free from her grip, his expression resolute. "If they see both of us, we're dead. We need to split up." The footsteps grew louder, reverberating off the walls, and a flash of fear ignited in her chest. He was right. They had to act fast. "Okay." She breathed, heart pounding. "Head for the alley exit, keep low, and find somewhere safe." "I'll catch up," he said, then took off down another path, blending into the shadows. She didn't have time to question him. With each step towards the street, her courage felt like a lifeline, but uncertainty tangled in her stomach. She was so close to freedom, yet the shadows felt heavy on her back. Just as she neared the alley exit, a strong grip latched onto her shoulder, pulling her roughly into an adjacent doorway. Her breath hitched, struggle rising in her throat. A voice whispered, cutting through her panic like a knife. It was a woman, eyes wild with urgency. "You must be quiet. We don't have much time." "Who are you?" Sandra whispered back. "I'm here to help you." They have eyes everywhere. Overwhelmed, Sandra felt heat flooding her cheeks. "But I don't even know you. Trust is all we have left. They're coming for you." With each word, shadows loomed larger, dark figures flitting through the weak light. Her heart sank as another realization dawned. Whoever was searching, they were hunting her, but not just for the woman she was. With her pulse pounding in her ears, the woman leaned in closer, breathless with fear. You are more than you understand. An asset, a target, or something worse. Just then, the air shifted, a heavy silence falling over the street like a thick fog. She felt a dark presence looming, just beyond the threshold. A cold chill washed over her. What in the world had she stepped into? And then, a single thought clawed through the chaos. What if she wasn't the only one in danger? Her heart raced. She had barely begun to untangle the web of her life, and now, it felt more tangled than ever. The weight of the moment pressed down on her as she dared to look deeper into the unknown. And in that breathless silence, wondering who the real enemy was, she realized a stark truth: time was running out. Would the next move be the difference between life and death? The sudden stillness shattered like glass when the dark figures began to creep closer, their heavy boots echoing down the quiet street. Sandra's heart hammered against her ribcage, a beat for every step they took. The woman beside her held her breath, eyes wide and unblinking, a visceral terror etched across her face. Out the back, the woman urged, her voice a ragged whisper. She gripped Sandra's arm, guiding her further into the darkness of the doorway. We can't let them see you. Stay close. With every ounce of adrenaline fueling her, Sandra obeyed. They slipped through a narrow passageway that reeked of dampness and decay. Shadows danced along the walls, and she could hear their pursuers close behind, voices muffled yet filled with menace, slithering into her mind like ice. What do they want? Sandra hissed, sweat beading on her forehead despite the chill that surrounded them. Everything, the woman replied, urgency lacing her words. You're not just a regular civilian. You're a key to something bigger than both of us. I don't understand. She blurted, panic rising. I'm just a pawn in a game you didn't even know you were playing. The woman's outburst rattled them both. Focus, Sandra. You need to trust me. I know a place where we can hide if we can get there. They rounded a corner, and the outside world pinched through the cracks of the alley. Bright streetlights flickered, casting strange silhouettes in every direction. Ignoring her fear, Sandra kept her eyes on the woman, who moved with a purpose, her grip steadying Sandra's wavering resolve. The faint sound of laughter cut through the tension, announcing the approach of a horde of people, oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. Sandra's instincts screamed to scramble, to melt into the crowd, but doubt tethered her feet to the ground. She felt raw and vulnerable, fear creeping in like a thief in the night. Now! The woman urged, pushing Sandra into the bustling street. They moved like phantoms among bargoers and laughter, her heart thumping in her throat as she risked drawing attention. Stay low. Blend in, the woman instructed, eyes scanning the surroundings like a hawk. In that moment, Sandra felt the dark weight of the situation press down on her. A sharp bite of dread clawed at her stomach. The more she ran, the less she understood. Who are you really? Sandra finally managed, adrenaline coursing through her veins, solidifying her tone. You don't just appear out of nowhere and drag me into this. The woman paused, searching Sandra's eyes as if weighing her words. My name is Anna. I used to work in the same field as you before everything went wrong. They've changed the game, and now you unknowingly hold a card that could topple them. Sandra's head spun. This doesn't make any sense. As they turned another corner, the laughter faded behind them, replaced by the sudden drone of engines and sirens. The realization bit her with cold clarity: if they were found, there would be no escape, no explanation. Get in. Anna suddenly gripped her wrist, yanking her toward a side alley where an old van stood waiting, the engine humming like a predator ready to pounce. Who's in there? Sandra felt a flicker of hope despite the fear clawing at her heart. Someone who can help, Anna assured. Please, you have to trust me. Frantically, Sandra moved toward the van, glancing over her shoulder to see dark figures converging at the other end of the street. Their time was evaporating like water on hot pavement. With a decisive push, Anna threw open the door. Now! Sandra jumped into the back, the metal cold against her palms, her breath coming in ragged hitches. But as Anna climbed in behind her, a terrible realization washed over her. The van wasn't the escape she thought it would be. A familiar face stared back from the driver's seat, and her heart sank. David? His voice was low and guarded, sending ripples of confusion through her. Are you with them? She stammered, betrayal pelting her with its heavy rain. No. He reached for her, fear etched into his features. I'm here to help. Just. As questions rushed to the front of her mind, a heavy thud reverberated against the van's exterior. Shadows closed in around them, a cacophony of urgent voices drowning out her thoughts. Drive! Anna shouted, desperation coursing through her. The engine roared to life, but as they lunged forward, the world spun out of control. The lurking figures from the past had caught up, and the haze of unknown intention settled over them like a dark shroud. Was David friend or foe? As Sandra grasped for answers in a swirl of confusion and fear, she realized the worst was yet to come. What truth lay buried beneath layers of treachery and deception? Did she truly know who to trust? The van surged forward, tires screeching against the asphalt. Sandra was pressed against the side, heart pounding wildly. Confusion washed over her as she sought clarity in the chaos. David! She shouted, forcing her voice over the hum of the engine. What are you doing here? I swear, I'm not part of this. He yelled, fingers gripping the wheel tightly. I was looking for you. Trying to find out what happened, but I got caught up in this too. His eyes were wild, filled with desperation. She wanted to believe him, but the knot of uncertainty twisted in her gut. How could he be mixed up in this? Where's the officer? The one who helped us? She demanded, panting. David's expression darkened. He's distracted them for now, but I can't promise for long. We need to find a way to. Before he could finish, there was a loud bang on the back of the van. A jolt went through them as they rounded a corner sharply. Sandra's heart skipped. They're coming. Just hold on. David shouted, his focus shifting to the road ahead. The van swerved, narrowly avoiding an oncoming car. But just then, the weight of fear crashed down around them as they spotted dark silhouettes merging into a blockade up ahead. Police cars had converged, lights flashing, a menacing wall of authority closing in. Shit! David cursed under his breath, his face a mask of panic. What do we do? Backtrack. Anna shouted, her voice bolstered by urgency. Go back. We might find an alternate route. With a hard twist of the wheel, David reversed, flinging them back into the chaotic streets just as the officers began to converge on the van. The tension felt palpable, stretching thin as they raced against the clock. But the moment was fleeting, sirens wailed closer, drawing nearer. Sandra felt her heart twist. Let's split up, Anna suggested frantically. There's too much heat here. No. Sandra rejected forcefully, her voice breaking. We stay together. We can't risk losing each other. Even if we stick together, they'll overrun us. Anna argued, pushing urgency into her words. Let us find a way to buy time. David declared, his determination sparking. We find a place to hide while we regroup. Where? Sandra's voice trembled, the stakes impossibly high. There's a warehouse lot nearby, Anna said, her eyes darting. It's abandoned. We might be able to lose them in there. Without waiting for more explanation, David veered sharply, and they rode on the edge of danger. The shadows felt alive, swirling with secrets and consequences as the world outside blurred. Eventually, they pulled up to the derelict warehouse, a cacophony of rust and decay. David parked, cutting off the engine, the silence in the cab settling like a thick fog around them as they dared to breathe again. Are you sure about this? Sandra whispered, the weight of doubt heavy on her tongue. It's our best shot, Anna replied, anxiety cracking through her voice as they scanned the vicinity. They stepped out, the light from the fading sun casting long shadows behind them. "We stick close," David reminded, his eyes darting suspiciously as they moved for the entrance, which hung ajar. "Right in here," Anna pressed, guiding them inside. The musty air enveloped them, cloaking their presence in deeper shades of fear. They moved quietly through the darkened hallways, where the echoes of their footsteps crunched against the remnants of shattered glass. The suspense thickened, loading their thoughts with doubt. Every creak of the floor sent Sandra's heart racing. "Do you think they followed us?" she whispered, panic swelling. "Let us hope not," David replied softly. "But we need to come up with a plan." Anna nodded, her brows knit in focus. "You're central to whatever this is, Sandra. We need to understand why." "I was just living my life," Sandra insisted, fighting back tears. "Now it feels like the sky is falling." But amidst her despair, a flicker of hope intertwined with the shadows. "What if I can find something here? Some clue to why they want me?" "Then we find it," David declared with fierce determination. "We can't fail now." As they moved deeper into the bowels of the old warehouse, a glimmer of light caught Sandra's eye. They approached a small room aglow with papers scattered across a desk, a disheveled archive of secrets. "Could it be?" Anna breathed, a glint of curiosity igniting. "Let us check it out," David urged, stepping forward, but their moment of hope was suddenly cut short. "Did you hear that?" Anna whispered, her expression frozen in fear. The distant sound of footsteps echoed ominously down the hall. "We need to hurry," Sandra urged, heart thundering. They rushed inside, skimming its contents, eyes wide in urgency. Sandra's hands trembled as she picked up a stack of papers. "Look. It's about Elizabeth. Documents these refer to the fraud scheme. Keep searching," David directed, urgency injecting strength into his voice. But the footsteps were growing closer, a menacing thrum approaching. Then came the shout from outside, clear as glass. "We know you're in there. Come out with your hands up." Dread constricted Sandra's chest. They were out of time. "Over there." Anna pointed towards a hidden trapdoor in the corner. "We can make it below." With everything hanging in the balance, they bolted towards it as the shouts crescendoed. Panic fueling their speed, they reached it just as the door banged against the wall behind them, their hearts pounding like war drums. The world outside might be crumbling, but within the depths of this darkness, beneath the clutches of chaos, Sandra felt the fire of resolution ignite. They wouldn't let fear control their fate. As they descended into the darkness below, they left uncertainty behind, no longer just running but ready to fight for the truth, for their safety, for everything that mattered. "Whatever happens next, we face it together," Sandra whispered, locking eyes with David. Together they would rise from this abyss, and that was just the beginning. You need to subscribe now, so you won't miss any of the exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the narrative alive. And don't hesitate to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild twist. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.